listen afterwards. And here we just started the recording. And just to inform, during the presentations, you will have the access to the chat. So if you were to have any questions directly for the experts and speakers, please feel free to use the chat box, stating the question and also stating to which expert or speaker you are referring your questions to. And also, we kind of will ask you to remain muted and your cameras off during the presentations. We will have interactive Q&A and discussion sessions, and we will definitely encouraging and motivating everyone to join the interactive Q&A and discussion sessions. And also, as you may see today, the language of the webinar is going to be English, but we also have the French interpretation option. So if you were to go down to the bottom of your Zoom, you will see that there is a world icon. And if you were to click on the world icon, you will get to see both of the languages, English and French. So depending on your preferred language, please choose the channel that you would like to listen and make sure that you stay in that channel during the sessions. So if you were to have any technical questions or if you were to have any other questions, my colleagues and I, we're here to reply to you or respond to you through chat. I have my colleagues here, Belen, Emma, Marion, and Abder. So if you were to have any questions, please feel free to ask us. So without further ado, I would like to start by introduction and welcome session of our webinar, because we have 3 hours and we have so much to do. So it's time for us to start. So as you know, today we will be focusing on the fundamentals of nature-based solutions. We will be focusing on the standard. We will be focusing on the self-assessment tool. We will have the interactive Mentimeter sessions and the Q&A sessions, and we will also have examples from the Mediterranean based on the implementation of nature-based solutions. And we have valuable speakers with us today, so we will try to make the best out of this webinar. So just to give a bit of a background about the organization of this webinar is co-organized by the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium in collaboration with IUCN. So Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium is a coalition of regional environmental organizations with extensive expertise and work experience in the Mediterranean basin, which join forces to protect more effectively the natural wealth of this biodiversity hotspot. As you see on the right-hand side, the organizations are all member of Biodiversity Consortium. And as IUCN, we are one of the co-coordinating partners of the consortium. And we are also partners of and implementing parts of the RESCOM project, which we are also making this webinar happen within the frame of the RESCOM project, which aims to strengthen the social and environmental resilience of natural areas in the Mediterranean through the implementation of nature-based solutions in close coordination with national and local stakeholders. So one of the most important goals of the RESCOM project was to launch a call for small projects, which will be coordinated by the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium within the frame of the RESCOM project. And we recently launched this call for small projects. And the main objective is to demonstrate the implementation of nature-based solutions in the Mediterranean. And this call for small projects will be focusing in 6 countries: Albania, Italy, Montenegro, Morocco, Tunisia, and Turkey. And the reason we are organizing this webinar is to have the nature-based solutions components to support with the proposal part of this call for small projects, and also as a component, as a capacity building component for the RESCOM project. So just to go over the agenda very quickly, so I will be giving the floor to my colleague Dorsa, and she will be mentioning about the fundamentals of nature-based solutions. And then we will have a Mentimeter exercise and a discussion session. And then we will move on to the overview of the IUCN Global Standards for NBS. And then right afterwards, we will have a Q&A session. And then we will have a short break. And afterwards, we will move with the self-assessment tool. And then we will have the case studies from different countries of the Mediterranean. Afterwards, we will have another interactive Q&A session, and then we will finalize our webinar. And as I mentioned previously, if you were to have any questions during the meeting, please refer in the chat, and we will do our best to answer your questions during the presentations or during the sessions. If not, we will definitely have the Q&A and the discussion sessions to refer to your questions. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Dorsa for her presentation regarding the IUCN nature-based solutions. So Dorsa.
Thank you very much, Yaprak, and hello to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. And as Yaprak said, I'm going to be focusing on the history of nature-based solutions, why we are talking about it, what we are hoping to be able to achieve through the MBS concept and approach, and on a more practical level, the criteria of the IUCN Global Standard for nature-based solutions. Later on, we will get familiarized with the IUCN MBS self-assessment tool, which will give you an opportunity to explore the platform and ask any questions or share any feedback that you may have. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, 1 second. Okay, please let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Dorsa Sheikh-Islami. I'm the Nature-Based Solutions Program Officer based in Switzerland, working at the MBS Management Hub, and I am focusing on the uptake and mainstreaming of MBS at the global level, both on policy and practice. So, I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce the International Union for Conservation of Nature and tell you why we think we are in a very good position to talk about the MBS concept. So IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, is a member union. So that means that we have more than 1,400 member organizations from governmental agencies, state members, NGOs, from the academia, civil society, indigenous peoples, working across IUCN as a union with the aim of addressing sustainability issues and for achieving sustainable development goals. IUCN also works with the private sector, also recognizing the potential as well as the impact that they have, and recognizing their role into achieving sustainability. So as part of the union, we have the members, then we have commission members. We now have 7 expert commissions that is consisted of experts and practitioners. So we have a lot of scientists, we have a lot of universities, as well as a lot of practitioners who are familiar with actions on the ground as part of the IUCN commissions that are the scientific and practical backbone of the IUCN as a union. And us, me, Yaprak, and the rest of the colleagues who are present in this call, we are part of the IUCN Secretariat. We have 11 regional offices, including the headquarters, as well as more than 60 national offices based on the needs at the country level. So this means that with the diverse set of members that we have, we are able to work across the union, work with our commission members, work with the experts, work with the policymakers and the financial institutions to develop cutting-edge science knowledge and standards that can support the development of policies, the direction of the financial flows, as well as the design of actions on the ground. So you probably have heard about the red list of threatened species. We have the red list of ecosystems. We have the green list of protected areas. And what I'm focusing on today is the IUCN Global Standard for nature-based solutions as one of the flagship knowledge products of IUCN. But what is enabling us to develop these products are present as a union in multiple levels. At the global policy level, we work with the state members, we work with major stakeholder groups to convene, to bring the different actors together to make sure that the policies are relevant and rigorous and are enabling sustainability action. At the regional level, we make sure that the global policies also are relevant to the regional context, same as national and subnational context. We have membership from the subnational governments working with IUCN Secretariat, again, to make sure that the sustainability policies, the financial decision-making, the actions on the ground are coherent and the different levels of action, they talk to each other. We also have projects on the ground. IUCN, it has the observer status and implementing status of some of the major funding mechanisms, the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environmental Fund. IUCN works with its members to make sure that projects are developed, they receive funding and are implemented according to the plan, as well as lessons learned are captured and are informing the next activities, whether they are the next phase of the project designs, developing of the grant mechanisms, or the new policies, as well as the knowledge products that are being used and developed across the Union. IUCN is present in more than 160 countries, and about two-thirds of the projects IUCN is involved in is with its state members. So, and we also have convening mechanisms. Maybe the most important one is the World Conservation Congress. It happens every 4 years, brings all of IUCN members across the globe together to receive updates from what has happened over the past 4 years, and for the members to put in resolutions, put in motions that, if adopted, turn into resolutions and guide the work plan of IUCN Secretariat for the following 4 years. We are very close to the next World Conservation Congress. It will happen next year in October, and to prepare for that, we just finished with rounds of regional conservation to collect the information, to make sure that the decisions are put forward for adoption, speak to the needs of countries, of regions, and across IUCN memberships. IUCN is also involved in several multi-stakeholder platforms. IUCN is the host of the is the Secretariat of the Friends of Ecosystem-Based Adaptation group that brings different experts together to focus on the role of ecosystem-based approaches for climate adaptation, as well as nature-based solutions in topics such as One Health, infrastructure, humanitarian action. We are part of the PEDAR network, a partnership for ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. We are part of the Global Mangrove Alliance. So we try to remain active and as part of different conversations to see what is being discussed and what are the issues, as well as what are the opportunities and potential synergies across the different actors that are working towards the goal of sustainability. It's not just limited to the governmental agencies. Since 2016, we opened a specific membership category for Indigenous peoples to make sure that their voice is also reflected in the decisions that are being made. We are, as I mentioned, working more closely with the private sector through IUCN's Leaders Forum. That is an annual event, again, to make sure that everyone is involved, because sustainability is not something that can be achieved by one organization or one specific type of actor. So I just wanted to share a little bit of the IUCN history. Over the 76 years that IUCN has been working on several levels as a conservation organization at its core, and through the close relationship with the governmental agencies, we are also seeing the activities from their development agencies, what is happening in the development sector, and we have been able to see this shift through the conservation approach. So very briefly, there was a time that conservationists were focusing on species and ecosystems, and we're trying to protect them and keep human out of these activities. And of course, the development sector needs those resources, natural resources, to achieve their development goals. So there was always this tension that took a trend of changes to put us at the place that we are today. So we went through nature for itself, let's keep people out of it. Nature despite people, make sure that nature is protected and the natural resources are reserved for species other than humans, to nature for people, where there was more access to the natural resources. And from 2010, like for the last, let's say, 15 years, we are seeing this change in mindset that brings nature and people together and is not treating them separately. And this also aligns with the 3 pillars of sustainable development goals. So we have people, nature, and economy that is linked to development as the 3 pillars of sustainable development, the components that cannot be treated separately, and they need to be addressed at the same time and in harmony. And the Venn diagram intersection is what MBS is about: finding solutions that can provide benefit for economy, for society, as well as nature. So there are different ways of talking about this, but what I would like to share with you is a demonstration, 2 demonstrations from 2 separate activities, one by the Stockholm Resilience Center back in 2016, almost 9 years ago, that categorizes the sustainable development goals into the 3 pillars of sustainability. As you can see, economy is on top. Then we have society that is closely linked to both economy as well as nature. And on the bottom, demonstrating its pivotal and central role is nature. So this is a way to visualize how society and economy rely on functioning and healthy ecosystem. So this is supposed to talk to the development sector and remind them that you cannot forget about the role of nature and how it is necessary to make sure that you also thrive and stay healthy. Then back in 2021, we had a report from Dasgupta from the finance sector that also put forward the graph on the right that demonstrate the central role of economy. So you can also not forget the importance of development for society as well as nature. So as you can see, the shift in mindset is about treating conservation as conservation, and we need to focus on like a species other than humans and keep it away from any kind of, let's say, intrusion, to development that is focusing on, okay, how can I use the ecosystem services for development goals, into the middle ground, nature-based solutions, that is trying to provide the gap between these 2 sectors and find solutions in the middle that provides benefits for people, for through development, through addressing societal challenges, as well as providing benefits for nature through protection, restoration, and enhancing the health and functionality of ecosystems that are necessary for society and economy. So this is how we would like to demonstrate this. As you can see, we have ecosystem-based approaches that come under the umbrella of the nature-based solutions concept, whether they are protection, whether they are the use of ecosystems for infrastructure, through sustainable management, through the restoration, through the use of specific functionalities of ecosystem for addressing problems. So these ecosystem-based approaches are utilized through their protection, sustainable management to address societal challenges. These challenges could be from climate change mitigation and adaptation related to water, so enhancing water security, enhancing food security, economic development, disaster risk reduction. So for providing benefits for humans and nature simultaneously at the same time. So it's very important to ensure that these benefits are happening for both of these target groups at the same time. So MBS are actions from nature for people and nature. And this started to resonate through a lot of commitments and goals that we have. MBS is directly providing benefits for 13 of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as well as providing indirect benefits for the remaining 4. It's another demonstration of how MBS functions at ecosystem level, as you can see through the protection, restoration, and sustainable use of foreign landscape, for example. You provide benefits that enhances water security. It provides benefits for erosion control, as well as reducing the disaster risk. So another important thing that supports the transition through the MBS mindset is the multiple benefits that MBS actions provide versus, for example, traditional engineering options. So let's use the traditional example of mangroves. So if you have coastal surges, traditional engineering, conventional engineering would direct you to constructing seawalls that can serve very well for the purpose of protecting your ecosystems, protecting your coastal surges and the communities that are based there from surges. However, there is another option, restoring the mangrove forests that were there, were degraded, and because of this degradation, they have left that coastal area prone to these surges. So through the restoration of those mangroves, not only you are enhancing the protection of your coast and reducing the risk of disaster, that is also something that your seawall would do. You also increase sediment control. You enhance water purification. You probably enhance the ecosystem for the other species that are residing in that area, that can contribute to enhance food availability and increased food securities for the communities that are there. In addition, I remember this very interesting video from a lady that was talking about how before restoring mangroves in close to the area that her house is at, she would wake up several times throughout the night because of the sound of the waves clashing into the seawalls. But since the seawall has been removed, as well as like part of it has been removed, the other part is enhanced by the restoration on the mangrove, so a hybrid solution. These like clashing sounds has reduced and her sleep quality has improved. So the human benefits on a mental health level of it. So these are like some of the let's say, selling points for always considering nature-based solutions options for addressing the challenges that you may have. Another classic example is the use of nature-based solutions in your urban areas. So, for example, like most of the time, the establishment or like restoring green areas in urban areas happened because of the climate change mitigation and adaptation lens. So we would like to increase the green spaces in urban areas to deal with the heat island effect of the cities. However, we see that the benefits goes beyond that. We provide benefits for climate mitigation through the increase of carbon storage, but we also provide better protection for storm water and surface runoffs. We increase the air pollution. We provide a better urban environment for the citizens, for the activities that they want to have. So again, one solution that provides multiple benefits that can address multiple challenges that your ecosystem may face, can provide multiple benefits from a social perspective as well as a financial perspective. So that is the thinking behind nature-based solutions. And again, it's very important to have in mind that NBS is supposed to provide benefits for both people and nature. At the same time, through the protection, restoration, and sustainable management of ecosystems. So I would like to stop here and go through a quick Mentimeter exercise just to start a conversation about what potentially qualifies as NBS and what does not fully align with the vision behind NBS. So if you go to menti.com and type the following code, 2658843, and let me know. Okay, I see that you're already there.
The link to the webpage and the code into the chat. So please feel free to click and access the menti.com and just type in the code, and then we will see what the results are going to be.
So wait, what? Don't put, I have not shared the question yet. So this is the question. We already have 4 people who have put yes, wait. And we have 189 people present. So I am expecting at least 100 responses. So the question is this, and think about, you know, those important aspects: benefit for nature, benefit for people, addressing societal challenges through ecosystem services. When you are, responding to this question. So this is the scenario, and we want to see if it's potentially an NBS or not. In a mountainous area of tourist interest, it is observed that the forest ecosystem has degraded due to unsustainable forest management and land use changes. The local authority decides to restore the area and plants fast-growing trees. As a result, in a 4 to 5 years window, the area is fully restored and suitable for tourism activities. So, a mountainous area, the issue there is because of ecosystem degradation through unsustainable forest management and land use changes. And the solution offered by the local authorities is to restore the area through the use of fast-growing trees. And the aim is to enhance the ecosystem integrity as well as enhance ecotourism. So do you think it's an NBS? Potentially. And we will talk about why I am using the word potentially here. Okay, we have 51 responses. Okay, I see that a lot of responses are coming in. Right now, we have 50 yes and 22 no. Okay, maybe another 30 seconds. Okay, we have 87. Maybe 10 more seconds. Go up to 100, please. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and the answer is no. Maybe, is there anyone here who would like to say why they said no and why they said yes? And Yaprak, will you please help me to see if there are any hands raised?
Of course, if anyone would like to contribute to why they said yes or no, please feel free. If you want, you can also state it in the chat as well, based on your preference. You can take the floor or just state written. I see that VM just stated in the chat, what is nature-based system?
Okay. VM, nature-based system, like, does this refer to a specific slide?
I will wait for VM's response. In the meanwhile, I see that from Kriel, no action on pressure, fast-growing trees might not be appropriate locally. And from many coming in. So from Esra Başak, I see that fast-growing trees usually imply non-native tree plantation. This way, I choose no. And then from Milika, I see that planting the fast-growing tree is not the appropriate management practice. I see that Egon, I'm apologizing for the pronunciations. So assuming that fast-growing trees are not native and appropriate. So the species are often non-native or monocultures, which can harm biodiversity, disrupt local ecosystems, and reduce long-term ecological resilience. There's no evidence that planting activity take in consideration of all the ecological aspects. So yes, there are many more responses coming in. I don't know if you will have the chance to read them all, but we are seeing the responses. Anyone who said yes and would like to contribute, that might also be interesting to see the dilemma. Yes, majority of the answers are focusing on nativity and also the fast-growing trees, and yes.
Okay, so that is correct. So as most of you highlighted, the thing that puts a question mark here is the use of the term fast-growing trees. And as you said, this usually means that the trees are non-native, which endangers the ecosystem integrity of the ecosystem that we are working with. So you may see very fast results and addressing what seems like a degraded ecosystem, but then very quickly afterwards, if these are invasive species, non-native species, then other problems will follow. And this is not a solution that provides benefit for nature, while in short term, it supports some of the societal needs regarding economic development through enhanced tourism activity. So thank you so much. We have another question, and this time I'm going to ask you to put what you think in the chat before I give you the answer. So this one is focusing on a wetland ecosystem. A wetland part of the national park provides a critical habitat for a duck species in danger of extinction. As it is a very fragile ecosystem, climate change will have irreversible impacts on the wetlands and the habitats. The national park team decided to take actions and restore wetland to strengthen the recovery capacity of the critical ecosystem and thus improve the habitat of the duck. So a degraded wetland leading into the degradation of endangered species. And to address this problem, the local authority, the national park, is like implementing actions to restore the wetland and protect the species. Do you think if it's an NBS or not? Potentially. Oh, you cannot.
Yes, they cannot vote at the moment. So
okay.
Ooh, somebody already gave away the answer, maybe.
Wait. Okay, how about now? Okay, I see the answers are coming in. Thank you. And sorry. So we have 32 responses, 33. And thank you, Yaprak, for putting the Menti link and the code in the chat again.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have 47 responses, 54, 50 yes, and 4 no. Another 30 seconds. Okay, I see more responses coming in. So for those of you who tried to submit their response and the Menti was not working, it is functional now. We had 90 responses on the first question. We still need another 25 just to match the number. So we have in the chat, yes, if it's a Ramsar site. Okay, so would you like to share either with raising your hand or if you're more comfortable putting it in the chat, why do you think it is an MBS? And from the 6 people who have put no, why do you think it's not a potential MBS? So right now we have 69 responses, 63 yes and 6 no. So we have no, because restoration without adaptation is not a long-term sustainable solution in facing climate change. We have not a potential MBS as human cannot control climate change impacts. And as I mentioned, it is predicted to have irreversible impacts. So one other criteria of successful restoration, there is no more potential threat that will impact the operation. So a lot of responses are focusing on the impact of MBS and the climate change and the long-term sustainability of the solution. No, because it is not clear about the actual action or the method to restore the wetland. The social and economic benefits for it are not established. My French is not the best, but I think one response is about the other sources of, like the causes of the problem are not studied and addressed. Then we have a response on why it is an MBS. It is qualifies as MBS because it addresses a critical environmental challenge by restoring a fragile wetland ecosystem threatened by climate change, and how the improving of the recovery capacity of the wetland enhances ecosystem resilience while protecting the habitat of the endangered duck species. So thank you so much. And yes, we will go through the MBS definition and the criteria of nature-based solutions according to the IUCN standards right after this exercise? Okay, so I am very sorry, but the answer is no. And it is no, because this activity is focusing on a traditional conservation action. So the problem here is an endangered species, an endangered ecosystem, and the activity is addressing that specific species and ecosystem. So the way that it is, it aligns better with conventional conservation activities and does not factor in the benefits for human directly. Yes, we can argue that enhanced wetlands improves the microclimate in the area, regulates the hydrological regime, most probably supports the food security of the communities that are relying on the wetland ecosystems for their livelihoods. However, this is an exercise just to establish that change and shift in mindset when we are talking about MBS and how MBS relies on ecosystem approaches. So ecosystem approaches are all of the activities that rely on ecosystem services while protecting, conserving, and sustainably managing them. But when we talk about MBS, we are using them to address certain societal needs. So through this, we provide benefits for nature, as well as we provide benefits for societies and for the development needs. This is also, so it's important, I believe, to keep in mind that MBS is a new way of talking about how we are functioning, how the system is developed. So we are not just focusing on one specific component, whether it is nature or it is development. We are finding coordinated and holistic approaches that is providing benefit for both of these. And this is an example just to highlight this mindset. So, and yes, I see that in the chat there are colleagues who are highlighting how restored wetland provides benefits for society, and it is very true. But look at this as a little bit of a more academic exercise just to get the vision behind MBS right. And yes, Lotfi, we ideally, again, like with MBS, because it's very context specific, we cannot say that 100% it has to be about the whole ecosystem, or 100% like if it's focusing on a part of an ecosystem, it does not qualify as MBS. But we are promoting a system thinking, so factoring in your whole ecosystem functionality and the complexity and interactions within your ecosystem, other than just focusing on your intervention site. So let me go. Oh, wait, sorry. Okay, I think I gave away. I hope that you didn't see the answer. We have the third question, and this is the last one. Yeah, I see yes is coming in before even reading the text. That's on me, my bad. But a village is located near a wetland and uses the water from it for agriculture. Due to variations of rainfall and temperatures, the farmers notice that the lake has shrunk and it is not so easy to use water from it. Authorities and the community decide to restore the wetland and its buffer zone to improve its capacity to retain water. Is it an MBS, potentially? Or if it's not an MBS? So another wetland ecosystem that provides water for the communities that rely on it, especially for their agriculture activities. Because of climate change, the water security is, let's say, threatened, and there are restoration activities aiming for addressing this problem and to enhance water security? Is it an MBS? And please feel free to put in the chat, why do you think it's an MBS and why do you think it's not? We have 5 no's right now. So from someone who voted yes, it addresses social needs by protecting the nature. Another yes, because you already, yes. Yeah, I gave the solution, but it seems focusing on humans doing something just for the good of people. Yes, because the restoration of the wetland also gives society benefits. Yes, because the need of water by agriculture is a typical societal challenge. It is an MBS because it addresses a water access problem for people that was caused by climate change. Yes, it depends on how the solution is designed and the technology that is needed. But let's say for this one, because it's focusing on restoring the wetlands, we are using ecosystem services. It is possibly an MBS since it has society and ecological environmental services. Yes, because it includes both environmental and societal needs. In terms of governance, it seems there is also consensus. Thank you so much for highlighting this. And the answer is, as you already know and you've seen, the answer is yes. Again, this is more like an academic practice just to get the vision and the concept right. And that is why we are using the term potential. For example, as very quickly highlighted in the chat, for example, governance is an important issue too. So it's not a very, 1 and 0 solution. There is a problem. We do this to address that problem. It is important how we are addressing the problems from a social perspective, from a governance perspective, as well as from the ecological needs. So this aligns with the concept of MBS. Because it is using ecosystem services, it is restoring an ecosystem that provides benefits for the nature through its restoration to address societal needs, which is enhanced water security that will also lead to enhanced food security. Okay, so let me just take a second to see the comments in the chat. Okay. Thank you. And yes, Kenza. So again, like it is why you are defining your project. Is it because of a societal need, or is it because of conservation needs? So with the question number 2, the driver was, okay, we need to protect a species and restore a habitat for the endangered duck. So it doesn't have a societal needs labeled there. Okay, so that is it from the first part. And Yaprak, can you please let me know if now we go directly to the second presentation?
Well, thank you very much for this interactive session, and it's really interesting to have these challenging questions. And I also see a lot of comments and interaction. I also see some discussion points and questions being raised. So I will kindly ask the participants who still have or may have questions to address them during the Q&A session, which will be right after the presentation of the Nature-Based Solution Global Standards. And Dorsa, more or less, we have half an hour, including your presentation and the Q&A session before we go into the break, okay? So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen again. And I will be faster this time if I can. Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So Now I want to talk about how the vision of nature-based solutions turned into a formal definition of MBS, and how like what was the reasoning and the logic behind IUCN's thinking on developing the standard. And then I would like to introduce the standard to you. So very quickly, again, it is very important to notice that MBS is not a new concept. It has been practiced for like thousands of years, let's say, through local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, the traditional practices that relied on ecosystems through their protection and conservation to address needs. However, sometimes we can also think about MBS as a communication means to establish the conversation between different sectors, and to trigger coordinated action, centering healthy nature and thriving societies in its core. So from IUCN side, we started using the term from early 2000s, officially at IUCN's position paper for the 15th Climate COP in Copenhagen. The term nature-based solutions was used for addressing climate change needs. This resonated with IUCN memberships, with other partners that are not necessarily an IUCN member, to the point that the IUCN Union, the members, decided that we need a formal definition of MBS to make sure that the actions we are taking are aligning with the vision of MBS. It happened in 2016. After this first global definition of MBS, IUCN continued working with the different partners, from the World Bank to the European Commission to the different governments at the different parts of the world, for setting policies as well as designing projects. Taking into consideration years and decades of lessons learned, mistakes, things that could have been done better, mistakes that we should avoid for our future plans, as well as things that work well, IUCN saw the need for an operational framework that channels all of these common and core successful factors for successful implementation of MBS. Again, it is important to consider that while MBS are solutions which supports actions on the ground, however, it is relevant for policy making as well as directing financial flows, because these principles are global and they talk to different contexts. So in 2018, IUCN started working on the standard. It took 2 years for it to be launched in 2020. Again, the term continued being talked and about and discussed at different levels, from policy, from finance, from practice, to the point that the member states of the United Nations Environment Assembly also saw the need for adopting a multilaterally agreed upon and negotiated definition of MBS that was adopted in 2022. That definition aligns well with the IUCN definition back in 2016, which makes us more confident in the standard that we developed in 2020. What is MBS? So we have the definition here available. As you can see, MBS are actions to protect, conserve, restore, sustainably use, and manage natural or modified ecosystems, whether they are terrestrial, freshwater, coastal, marine, for addressing societal challenges effectively and adaptively. So it is also important to notice the terms effective and adaptive, because these are the terms that then led the development of the criteria of the standard. Simultaneously providing human well-being, ecosystem services, resilience, and biodiversity benefits. As you can see, the global definition of MBS, the multilaterally agreed upon definition, also highlights the simultaneous benefit for both society and nature. And why is it important to have a definition? And again, to get the vision right, we have MBS that we talked about, the use of healthy ecosystem, the use of ecosystem for addressing problems while providing benefits both for people and nature. We have other types of solutions that rely on ecosystem services, for example, renewable energy, wind farms, sorry, that they're using ecosystem services that are deriving from it to address the problem, the need for energy. However, they are not directly providing benefits for nature. We call them nature-derived solutions. We also have solutions that are inspired by nature, nature-inspired solutions like biomimicry that do not work with ecosystem services, nor that they provide benefits for nature. So it is important to not forget about the importance of benefits for nature when we are talking about MBS. After the global adoption of the global definition of MBS, it started being embedded in international policy at the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, so addressing land degradation needs. At the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, recognizing the role of wetlands for addressing climate change and other social needs. 2 of the 18 targets of the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, targets 8 and 11, are focusing the role of MBS for achieving them. We have also MBS in the context of the climate change commitments, also recognizing the potential of MBS for achieving climate goals through the UNA mechanism. There are also follow-up actions and resolutions from the discussions in 2022. So earlier this year in February, another resolution was adopted that is focusing on the use of MBS for aligning all of these international climate, biodiversity, land degradation commitments. So you can also see that MBS has gone beyond just the practice and field-based intervention, but is also being used as a policy instruments for aligning different actions and making different sectors talk to each other, as well as making different, let's say, departments within an institution that are focusing on each of these specific commitments also talk to each other, because most of the time they share nature as a common mean for achieving their targets. MBS is embedded in IUCN work, the Nature 2030 strategy. We also are working on developing our 2050 vision that has MBS embedded in it. I talked about how MBS is now in the heart of many multilaterally agreed environmental agreements, which then transfers into the implementation of those decisions through goals and targets that have been set, SDGs, NDCs, MBSAPs, national adaptation plans, and so on, and the role that it has with the private sector in achieving their climate goals, especially because sometimes when they are focusing on developing their strategies to achieve net zero targets, they forget that nature is one of their biggest allies for getting where they need to get to. So you see that MBS is relevant in different contexts. It has different scales of implementation and also is relevant to different thematic areas. And for that, IUCN channeled years of experience, as well as through a consultative and co-creation process, developed the IUCN Global Standard for MBS. It is highly aligned with the global definition of MBS adopted in 2022 by the United Nations Environment Assembly. You can use the standard to design, assess, and scale up your MBS action. It has 8 criteria and 28 indicators, and more than 1,000 comments were received from more than 800 people across 100 countries through that 2 years of development process. So it wasn't just IUCN Secretariat sitting in the room deciding what the standard should be like. It went through a consultation and co-creation process. But what is the standard? What are these criteria? What is the standard? We have criterion 1, societal challenges, at the heart of the standard, to remind ourselves that this is not a traditional conservation activity. We are using nature to address societal challenges. And then we have design at a scale that is promoting system-based thinking instead of site-based thinking. factoring in the impact that your intervention receives from the ecosystem, as well as the impact that it has on the ecosystem. It also factors in the risks and opportunities and the synergies that your intervention should be aware of and mindful of, as well as the opportunities that it has for amplifying its impact. And we are not just talking about the geographical scale, we are also talking about factoring in the economical context, the cultural context, the political context when we are designing solution. So the standard is a process-based standard. It is not focusing on the end product. It is talking about how we can improve the process of design, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation of our intervention, as well as it is targeting on the factors that, if you have in mind, you are able to identify risks and identify opportunities to increase the effectiveness and sustainability of your intervention. It's very important to have this in mind, because we are working with nature, and nature is like, you cannot most of the time receive the ecosystem services you want within 3 years. We need to think a little bit more long term. Criterion 3, 4, 5. These criteria are focusing on the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Again, biodiversity, net gain is talking about how you are working with nature. Do your baseline study, do your monitoring and evaluation, make sure that you are understanding the ecosystem you are working with, you're choosing the right species, you are making sure that the intervention you are making is not having unanticipated adverse impact on your ecosystem. Economic viability is criterion 4, that talks about how to make sure that your intervention is economically viable and feasible. It also promotes thinking about what happens to your intervention after the implementation phase has concluded. From IUCN side, we see so many times that we are non-profit, so we are hired to design and implement a project for, let's say, 3 years or 5 years, and when the implementation phase finishes, then we have to leave. What happens if there are maintenance needs, let's say, after this part? Maybe we can spend a little bit of money to avoid major losses and to avoid something happening that can undo all the work that we have done. Criterion 4 is focusing on this. Then, to make sure, and it was highlighted by you, inclusive governance is very important. We have to do proper stakeholder engagement from the design phase throughout the monitoring and evaluation, establishing a grievance mechanism, have your stakeholder mapping, stakeholder engagement throughout this process. Criterion 6 is focusing on balancing trade-offs, because we recognize that almost unfortunately in the real world, no solution is 100% perfect. And sometimes maybe temporarily someone pays and someone loses, and we need to be able to map this, understand this, and put in place proper safeguards to make sure that there is no more injustice. Criterion 7 is focusing on adaptive management, that talks about having a robust data collection throughout the life cycle of your project. So you collect information, you're monitoring and evaluation, but not once the project has ended, throughout its design and implementation. So you collect the information, you process them, you identify risks, you identify opportunities, and then you implement corrective actions where needed. And the last criterion is focusing on linking actions on the ground to global efforts, mainstreaming for sustainability, which means that it encourages you to document and share your lessons learned, so the people, the practitioners after you can use your experience to make sure that their projects are performing well, as well as linking all of these global commitments to what is actually happening on the ground. The standard right now comes in 3 components. We have the standard booklet that has the criteria with case studies that elaborates on these criteria and what is the vision behind that. The guidance document goes into more detail about what is it that we want to do with every specific indicator, and to make it more user-friendly, there is a self-assessment tool now available online that provides a space for you to actually assess your projects against the standard. And since its launch in 2020, the standard has been applied in different parts of the world, in different types of ecosystems for different thematic needs. And we are collecting the lessons learned into developing the 2nd edition of the standard that we are aiming to launch at the next year's World Conservation Congress. Okay, so after this, we will be focusing on the self-assessment tool. So because most of you here are practitioners, you have hands-on experience on designing projects. So we think it's a good opportunity for you to go through this. But I wait here for a second and I look at Airport. Are we doing with time?
We are doing good on time.
Okay.
So if this presentation, the standard global standards presentation is over, we can move on with the Q&A session before the break. And then after the break, we will continue with the self-assessment tool. Okay,
perfect.
So
let me stop sharing.
Yes. Then, so we have around more or less 15 minutes for the Q&A session before we go into our short little break, because I would like to give some time for Dorsa and the participants to refresh a bit. So now the floor is open. You can raise your hand, you can write your questions in the chat. I have seen some questions and discussion points which were stated in the chat previously. So for those participants who are interested, please feel free to raise your hands or state it in the chat for the discussion session. So we have just a suggestion coming from Krill. Can you remind us in the chat the link to the standard? So definitely we will share the link to the standard. So for those participants who were asking some questions and raising some points, would you be willing to share them? And Marion and Belen, if you have detected any questions, please feel free to state them, and maybe Dorsa will be able to address them. And for those who joined a bit afterwards, so we are actually recording the sessions and the links will be shared right afterwards. Maybe Dorsa, just to initiate the discussion sessions, maybe you might have some questions for the participants that you think may be relevant.
Of course. So I would, for me, it's always very interesting to know, because you have a lot of experience that goes beyond just like since nature-based solutions became a big thing. How do you see this relevant in your work? Does this give you like a pivotal shift in how you design your projects, implement your project, or it aligned well? Do you see MBS relevant to your work? And have you used the standard before?
While we are waiting for the answers, there's just a question in the chat. Would you say that NBS is an anthropocentric concept or rather a way to ecocentric approach? It's a good question. Huh?
It's a very good question. I would say both of them. So what we're trying to do with MBS is have all of these on the table at the same time. And it is very important to make sure, and this is going to sound a little bit like, I don't know, like a lot of jargon, but MBS should be socially and ecologically just. So it means that, again, and I've said this a lot of times, so apologies if you're already too tired by this, but it is important to make sure that both people and nature benefit through our actions.
have a response from one of the participants responding to your question. So from my experience, it's very difficult to share this theoretical standard and methodologies with governmental organizations that are in charge to carry out field projects. How do you face this challenge? So it's both like a comment and a question. So
okay. Can you please repeat the first part?
So from my experience, it's
Yes.
very difficult to share this theoretical standard and methodologies with governmental organizations that are in charge to carry out field projects. How do you face this challenge?
Yeah, so when a very, very valid question, because the change is not very easy. But one thing that we have found helpful is, first of all, communicating on the benefits of NBS actions, multiple benefits, co-benefits, how you are designing it to address one problem, but there are several benefits that arise from it. The second part is that when we were piloting the standards right after its launch, we applied it to our members came to us for it to be applied to projects that have already been completed, and a lot of them qualified as an NBS. So it is not that. So one way to communicate is that you show them that it is not something new. It's just a better way of knowledge management and processing the information that you already have.
Thank you, Dorsa. So there's another comment and a question as well. For a project, how many measurements of the NBS indicators should be made, and at what interval between each measurement to conclude that the project is NBS?
Yes, thank you so much. And another very good question. You need to be patient with me when I respond to it. It is important that when you go through the indicators, you see that they are interlinked. Sometimes when you start working with the standard, you feel like some of them may repeat themselves, but that is not the case. It just recognizes how you, for example, you cannot identify your pressing societal challenges without talking to the communities who are facing those challenges. So it means that you have to do inclusive governance, you have to do your stakeholder engagement, as well as identifying the safeguards that you need to put in place, which means criterion 6. So for this very small example, you have already covered the 3 criteria of the 8 criteria. So that is why we are saying all criteria you need to, and I see that some of you have already are familiar with the rating system of the standard. You need to, so there are 4 rating systems: strong, adequate, partial, and insufficient. And we want at the criterion level to at least receive to partial. When it is insufficient, it usually means 2 things. Either you don't have the documentation to provide justification for your rating, which is most of the time is like resources issue, or you have forgotten something fundamental that may pose a risk to the sustainability of your project. That is why we say all 8 criteria, and selecting a set is not negotiable.
On that question,
okay.
It says to improve a project assessment as insufficient NBS to a partial adequate situation and become strong NBS, what should we do, and is it feasible?
Yes, so when you apply the standard, what it does is to help you identify areas of strength, what is making the project work the way that it is working, as well as areas of improvement. So with when you go through the self-assessment tool, there are guiding questions. They are giving you questions you need to ask from yourself as the, let's say, project coordinator or the project designer, on like how you are working with the data that you need to have to design and implement and monitor your project properly. And once you identify those gap in data, then you'll see whether you have not documented them or there are no mechanisms to give you that data. And then like once you identify these areas of improvement, then you can define the actions to correct it. And yes, from IUCN side, for example, we have projects that were like in their first phase, they were assessed against the standard, and the second phase was informed by the outcome of the first phase and aligned better to the criteria.
Well, I'm doing my best to follow up with the chat and all the comments and questions. So
Yes.
I'm trying to move on to the next comment. One potential of NBS is to tackle societal challenges, showing a high level of perception from local community, regardless their science-based relevance.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So there's a question, is NBS is beneficial for nature and society, but not really for the economic? Is it still NBS for economy? Is it still an NBS or not?
So as part of criterion 8, as part of criterion 4, it is calling for a cost effectiveness analysis. So you identify why you are choosing your, like when you're developing your environmental and social impact assessment. As part of it, usually you go through like the different options that you have, the different solutions, and then you provide, justification why you're going with the solution that you have chosen to design your project and implement it. And when you do a cost-benefit analysis and cost-effectiveness analysis, you also have the numbers from an economic perspective to let you know whether this is economically also feasible or not. It is true that not all nature-based solutions are bankable. It means that not all nature-based solutions have the exact investment rate, return of investment that other types of solutions can provide, but it's a balancing trade-offs. Sometimes you are prioritizing other benefits, or because you are like following the commitments that you have made for climate and biodiversity. We recognize that.
There is also another question, which is also directed towards our call for small projects, which we are actually framing this nature-based solutions webinar. So will this session discuss further using the multi-ecosystem approach, which is mentioned in the call for small projects? Well, definitely in the next upcoming session, you will be mentioning about the self-assessment tool, which will definitely be touching base to that. And also right afterwards, we will have the case studies from the Mediterranean, and that case studies will definitely give some examples from this multi-ecosystem approach of implementing nature-based solutions. And I also see that some of the participants are also interacting with each other. So it's really nice to see that. And I saw Marion just turning your camera on. Would you like to say something, and would you like to intervene?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just because there are a few questions in French also that I can just translate for Dosa.
Feel free.
One is on can NBS solutions coexist with other non-natural solutions, meaning some engineering measures. And another one is dealing with agroecology, if this can be considered as a nature-based solution.
Yes. So there are like so we need to remain realistic. Sometimes we don't have the means, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, we cannot wait for nature-based solutions to become effective. For example, going back to the mangrove example, if sometimes you cannot wait 2 years for your mangrove forest to start delivering ecosystem services, and you need to have a faster solution. And that's where, first of all, that cost effectiveness analysis is something that guides you, as well as sometimes you go with hybrid solutions. You have a seawall, at the same time you work on the mangrove restoration of your ecosystem. So in a hybrid manner, you address the problem as well as enhancing the ecosystem integrity. And then the second part was about agroecology and whether that qualifies as NBS. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the question.
Again, that's why we use the term potential. Potentially, yes, but then when it comes to, because in theory, it is about enhancing ecosystem services and ecosystem integrity for your agricultural purposes, but you will need to assess it against the standard if you want to follow the IUCN standard to see whether the governance aspect is done properly, stakeholder engagement has done properly. From a financial perspective, are you taking into consideration what you need to take into consideration? But yes, agroecology technically falls under the umbrella concept of MBS.
That I will take, and then we will move on to the break. So the question is, can you tell what criteria and indicators could be used to evaluate the 3 examples you showed previously?
Yes. Okay. So for example, or let me just get the examples and make sure that, so the first one was about the problem there was fast growing trees. So criterion 3 of the standard net gain biodiversity talks about doing a baseline assessment and understanding the species that are already part of the ecosystem. So you are not introducing potential harmful alien or invasive species. So the term fast growing would put a question mark for the alignment under criterion 3. The second question was about dock protection activities, and that relates to criterion 1, that is about societal challenges. So there are 3 indicators there, are all focusing on identifying and prioritizing the most pressing societal challenges for the communities and understanding the drivers of that are causing those societal challenges. And the third indicator is about doing benchmarking, so you understand where you are. So later on through your project implementation and monitoring and evaluation, you're able to measure the type of benefits that you have provided. So when we talk about societal challenges, that dog protection technically falls under conservation activities. So that is where the question mark on potential MBRs comes in. And then the third question was wetland restoration for water security and food security purposes. So the societal challenges, there are water security and food security. And through wetland restoration, again, we did not, it's true, it was highlighted by you that we don't exactly know how it is happening, but we are assuming because it's the actions to restore natural or modified ecosystems, it also aligns with the MBS vision. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Dorsa. And thank you very much for all the comments and questions. Just to inform that there will be another Q&A session at the second half of the webinar. So we are actually more or less perfect on time, let's say. So we will give a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at 11:30. And then in the second half of the webinar, Dorsa will be mentioning about the self-assessment tool. And then afterwards, we will give the floor to our speakers to give us some examples from the Mediterranean. And then we will have our final Q&A session before we close the webinar. So just 5-minute break for the speakers to refresh and also for the participants to refresh. And at 11:30, we will be back again with the second half of the webinar. And for your questions, please keep them in the chat and maybe Dorsa will address them after she finalizes her sessions. Okay, thank you. See you in 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. See you in a bit.
Okay, well, that was a very quick break because we have more upcoming presentations and very exciting case studies as well. So without further ado, I will give the floor back to Dorsa. She will be mentioning about the self-assessment tool. And right afterwards, we will move on with the case studies with our speakers. So
Okay.
Dorsa.
Thank you so much. And can you please let me know if you can see the
Yes,
slide?
we can see the slide.
Amazing. And just very quickly, when I move this, are you able to see my Chrome, my browser?
Yes.
Okay, good. We need that for the next part. Okay, so I talked about the standard itself, but on a more practical way, while the standard, the criteria of it is relevant for policy setting, for designing your institutional strategies, your protocols, as well as your screening criteria and prioritization criteria for your project pipeline development. Right now, we want to focus on actual projects and field-based interventions and how we assess them against the standard using the self-assessment tool of the IUCN Global Standard for MBS. So I don't know if you have already used the self-assessment tool on its online version, and you have joined the IUCN MBS user group and have received it in an Excel document. Let me know if you already have experience with it. But this is how the self-assessment is designed. So we have 8 criteria. Each criterion has its own set of indicators under it. For example, for criterion 1, we have 3 indicators, each of them focusing on an important matter. We have the text of the criteria of the indicator. Indicator 1.1, the most pressing societal challenges for right holders and beneficiaries are prioritized. So you can, up to here, you can find it in the standard main document as well as the guidance documents. What the self-assessment tool brings to you are these guiding questions that you can ask yourself to assess the adherence against this, alignment against the standard. We have a rating system, a flashlight rating system, strong, adequate, partial, insufficient, and I'll show it to you on the online platform. You'll have these information buttons where it gives you more description on like what qualifies as strong, what qualifies as adequate, and what qualifies as the other rating systems. The way we have designed the self-assessment tool to help you document your answers is that you have a text box for rationale where you put your thinking of why do you think, for example, your project is doing adequate. So you choose the rating of adequate, you put the rationale of why do you think it's adequate. So have all of the societal challenges identified, have some of them identified, most of them identified. Under tools for implementation, in the offline version, you had it as means of verification. So what it provides you is in a space where you put references to your project documentation where this information is present. For example, like you refer to your project implementation document or your environmental and social impact assessment, where you clearly identify the societal challenges you're dealing with in your project. So you put the reference there. You put page, let's say 10 to 15 or like chapter 6 of your environmental and social impact assessment report. And you're also able to upload those relevant documents directly to your platform for further use. So that is how you do the assessment. You ask the questions you need to ask yourself, you do a rating, you provide the thinking behind that rating, you provide the reference, and if you want, you can upload the reference documents here too. And what you get at the end is a rating on how you are doing for each criteria and each indicators. So here is an example. So you're able to get 2 reports from the system, the online platform, a short report that gives you a high-level overview of what you're doing, and a longer report which gives you a report of what you have actually put on your assessment. So you see here as an example for indicator 8.1 under criterion 8, here is the rating. The rating here is partial. Here is the thinking of why it is partial, the rationale, the reference to where this information is provided. So the justification for this specific project, it is referencing to 5-year monitoring report of the project that talks about how, like, what has happened with the lessons learned, how MBS design implementation and lessons learned are shared for triggering transformative change, and the link to the document that you have uploaded. What it helps is for you to have an overview of what is happening. Most of the times, the projects are large scale. Sometimes they are happening across multiple countries, and there are other people, multiple people who are in charge of different components of the project. For example, you have a governance specialist, you have a gender specialist, you have your monitoring and evaluation officer, you have your the person who go for a field survey for doing surveys on the type of species that are available in your area. You have people who are there to monitor the social benefits that have been provided. So every person is very insightful about one aspect of the project, but sometimes they like this bigger picture of what is actually happening with the different aspects of the project is missing. And we are seeing that a lot with the projects who are working us. The project coordinator sometimes, most of the time, has a very good overview of what is happening, but doesn't have the exact details that is needed to do the assessment. So through this, we are providing this framework that helps you summarize and put in one place the different aspects of your project. So you can also share it with your project partners, to your different stakeholders. So there is more transparency of what is happening. There is better communication. Another use of the self-assessment tool is that when you come back after 1 year into implementation, 2 years into implementation, into the second phase of the project, when you apply it again, you are able to do a comparison. You see that at the beginning, through what we had put through for future monitoring evaluation project legacy, it qualified as partial, then we took corrective measures, and now it is strong. And you see where you were, where you have come from, what has make it work, and what can still be done. So now we have time around 20 minutes for you to explore the platform for yourself. So you can scan the QR code if you are using your mobile, or if you're using your laptop. Yaprak has already put the link in the chat. So it's mbs-sat, which is self-assessment tool.iucn.org. So I'll wait here for 30 seconds for those of you, which I hope are all of you, who are interested in exploring the self-assessment tool with me today, to go to the website. And let me put it in the chat again. So when you click on this, this is what you see. A brief introduction of what the tool is. There is a login user guidance that tells you exactly how you can log in into the platform, how to create an IUCN account, how to get started with the platform. So it is always there for you to use as a reference. But what you do is that you click on the right, get started. If you don't already have an IUCN account, you can create a new account. If you have already an IUCN account, this doesn't matter like what kind of account you have, whether you are part of commission, whether you have logged in to be receiving IUCN newsletter, whether you are an IUCN member. you can use that same account to log into the platform. But in case if you have never used any of the IUCN services, you can always create a new account, and this is available to public. You don't need to be an IUCN member to be able to use this. This is free access for everyone. And maybe I'll just wait 30 seconds for those of you who want to create a new account to be able to do this. And please let me know in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, if there are any issues, if you've successfully created your account, so I can do a live demonstration and demo of how the website and the platform works. And while I'll wait for you to get into the platform, there is a question about contextualizing and personalizing the weighting of the indicators. Well, the standard right now, we don't have a certification scheme. It is not like IUCN is telling you how to use the standard. We always want you to highlight that your intervention and your assessment has not been used by IUCN if you want to communicate about it. But it is a voluntarily standard and a guideline for you to see how best you can use it. Our recommendation is that all criteria have the same weighing, and all indicators based on how, like, what is the number of indicators under the criteria, they are also have the same weighing. And that is how we see the standards being best used. We don't think prioritizing a criteria or an indicator over others necessarily support the sustainability of your intervention. And most probably you will not prioritize something that you already need to prioritize. Okay, are we good? Okay, so let me log in. And what you see will be a little bit different from what I have, because I have administrative rights. So you will not see all self-assessments, and you will not see data exports. I am able to see this because I have access to the backend. And right now I'm the only one who has access to this. So I want to also show you of the data safety. So we follow the GDRP. We follow all data safety measures, and the information you put on the platform is only accessible by you. To enhance this, we have right now in this version of the assessment, one self-assessment is only accessible by one person, and you cannot have multiple logins at the same time to the platform. So it also ensures that only you are working with your self-assessments. Okay, so when you are on the landing page, you have to create your account first if you already don't have the information. So you put some basic information from the country of origin, like the type of societal challenges that you are working, the type of organization that you are working, and this information anonymously comes to us for us to understand who is using the platform, who is the target audience. So we use this to make sure that we can define the next steps, the type of thematic guidelines that we are developing, the type of case studies that we want to assess against the standard based on the need. So if most of the need is coming from development agencies, most of them are coming from NGOs, in academia, or a specific societal challenge that is being prioritized over others. So this helps IUCN understand what are the needs and to define next steps accordingly. So these are not like in-depth questions. It literally is about the type of organization that you're working with, how big it is, and the type of societal challenges. And we also use the International Labour Organization and defining the sectors. So you're able to choose the sector you are working with the most. So once you have set up your account, then you are able to start doing an assessment. You click a new assessment, and what you see is this. So you have like a general information about your project. This is also a change from the Excel spreadsheet file that you probably have used before that jumps directly into the criteria, but putting the intervention title, its location, the start and end dates, you'll see like further down here, like the type of societal challenge it is addressing, what is the problem, what is the solution, and what is the expected results, or if the project is already completed, what are the actual outcomes of the project. It helps you to put all the necessary information for a good overview of the project in the assessment. So when you share it with your stakeholders, with the other project partners, they also know where things are starting from. And again, here we have the sector according to the International Labour Organization's definition and categorization of the thematic focus of the intervention. So once you are done, it should take 5 minutes or less. Then you jump right into the assessment through the criteria. As I showed it to you, as you can see, there are different indicators under each criteria. And you do not need to like finish one by one to be able to go through. You're able to move between criteria as needed. And sometimes when you do the assessment and you see the linkages between the different indicators, you may want to go back and add to the rationale, change the rating, change the tools of implementing. So I mentioned that you're able to see the criterion itself, the indicator, and the guiding questions that you should ask yourself while you're trying to rate your intervention. Here on the information button, there is more information about the indicator. Sometimes there is context provided on how it links to other criteria and indicators of the standard. And here for the rating, for example, you can choose partial, you can change it to adequate, you can put a strong, and to know how it qualifies, there is also guiding here. So for example, this question is on the most pressing societal challenges for right holders and beneficiaries are prioritized. And you need to ask yourself whether you have identified societal challenges, have you consulted the right holders while you were identifying and prioritizing them? And are you sure that the most pressing societal challenge has been prioritized? And the rating here is that yes, if you have prioritized the most pressing societal challenges in full consultation, adequate if specific societal challenges are identified with consultation with some of your stakeholder groups. Partial, it's a little bit more general and generic on general societal challenges with limited input from some stakeholders, and insufficient is when no, you have not done this identification, nor that you have done a consultation. As you can see, like insufficient is like getting partial, getting adequate. We see that a lot. If you have the documentation to show that you have actually done the work, then I would not worry about failing under a criteria. So here, what helps you decide what rating you align with, then you're able to put the rationale. Yes, climate change, sorry. Water security is identified, tools of R. then tools for implementation, you can have a stick. The environmental and social impact assessment report page, plus you're able to, for example, your stakeholder engagement minutes, where you show, like when you presented these challenges, you consulted with them to make sure that they agree with you, or they're guiding you on prioritizing the societal challenges identified. And then here you're able to upload the documents you need to document. So you do this for the H criteria 28 indicators, and then you're able to either save as draft, completely cancel your assessment, or once you have done everything and you're happy and satisfied with your assessment, you click on complete. That is when you're able to extract reports to show the outcome of your assessment. So this was a quick overview and a demonstration of how the self-assessment tool works. And no, it does not rely on AI. Like it will be IUCN staff or our commission members that will provide feedback if you want the feedback to be provided. So you will be extracting your report, you will be sending it to us. We will also not go through your assessments on the platform. You will need to share the document with us, the outcome of your assessment and the report, because I again want to highlight that we fully respect the data security measures. So let me know what you want to do. Would you like to have still, I think in our agenda, we have around like 10 minutes foreseen for you to explore the self-assessment tool, see how it works, the mechanics of it. And if you have any questions, I am here to answer. And if you have any feedback, this is also a perfect opportunity, because we are collecting feedback for the revision of the standard for its second edition. So the next 10 minutes is up to you.
As Dorsa mentioned, we have around 10 minutes for our next session of our speakers. If you were to have any specific questions regarding the self-assessment tool or any comments, please feel free to share in the chat or directly raise your hand to ask Dorsa. If not, we can move on with our next session of speakers, and Dorsa will be with us till the end, so she will still be able to reply to your questions via chat as well. So any questions or comments regarding the self-assessment tool? This self-assessment tool will be very useful for the organizations that will be applying for the call for small projects. So it will be very important for the organizations to review the assessment tool. And if they were to have any questions, they can definitely email us afterwards. We will also share our emails, especially for the organizations that will be applying for the call for small projects. And well, you are welcome, Judith. We are doing our best to give the fundamentals of NBS and its implementation, including the standards and the self-assessment tool.
Thank you, Yaprak. I have direct messages with some questions. So one question is about, is the assessment done only once at the end of the project? No, depending on the context of your project, depending on the time and resources that you have, you can apply it as many times as you want. Ideally, you want to apply it at the design phase for the first time. So if there are any gaps that you have identified, at least you're doing an informed decision making, and you know that there are things that you may want to address if you have the ability to address them based on the resources. You know, not sometimes, like, not everything is perfect, and that is the reality, and it's perfectly fine. And you may want to apply it several times during the implementation phase, again, depending on how long your project is being implemented. If you have several phases, it's a good idea to apply it at each phase, so you can transfer that information to the second phase of your project. And even if your project is fully completed, you can always capture lessons learned. You'll see what worked very well in your project and what could have been done better, so you can transfer that knowledge into the next project that you're designing and implementing. We have another question. For the second criterion of scalability, could you please expand a bit on it, and how to assess whether a project can be transferred beyond its local specificities? Thank you so much. This is a very good question, and it's honestly not an easy one to answer. So maybe, why did I close this? Give me 1 second. So maybe I can just go through the indicators. And is it okay, Yaprak, if I share my screen again? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So again, because the criteria of the standard are global and they are meant to be global, so it talks to different thematic areas, different sectors, and different scales. Defining the scale of your project is, or the scale of the impact of the project also relates a lot to the size of your project. Is it a small project or it's a multi-country implementation? So you need to have that in mind. But the idea here is that you collect all the information that can have an impact on your project, or the impact that the project has on your intervention. Something as simple and as obvious as, okay, I am doing a river restoration, but it has happened because different departments, they don't talk to each other, plans change. But then there is a dam that is being constructed on the upstream. So if that is happening, you have to see what it means for your river restoration activities. Does it still make sense, or there are the like safeguarding measures you can put into place to make sure that what you are doing is actually delivering the results it wants to have? And that river restoration activities, how it is impacting the downstream of your project. When it comes to agriculture, what happens with the pollution and runoffs? So that is more like geography. Then we want to know about economy, as you can see here, economy and society. So we've had projects that the first phase was implemented exactly as it was meant to be implemented. However, the political situation changed. And then the second phase completely, there is a question mark there. And this also came out at the outcome of the assessment through criterion 2. So now our colleagues from our IUCN regional office there are putting in place mechanisms as like safeguarding, and there are like scenarios that they're developing. If this happens, what is it that we can do? Or like, you know, you're doing an informed decision making with the realities. It doesn't mean that you can always find an answer to a problem, but you at least know there is a problem that you may be able to find an answer to. Then criterion 2 is about design of MBS integrated with other complementary interventions and synergies across sectors. So an example of this, I would like to share 2 examples. One of them is all of the activities that are happening around the Aral Sea. We have a lot of development agencies who are working in that area. They are basically doing the same thing in different parts of the Aral Sea ecosystem, but they don't necessarily talk to each other. They don't necessarily learn from their lessons learned, and they don't align their activities, which sometimes means they may cancel each other out, and sometimes means missed opportunities. Another way to look at this is that sometimes your project is not that large a scale to have an impact on the ecosystem level, but then there are like several restoration activities that are happening that you can align with each other to have that restoration impact. Here in Geneva, there is a restoration from the province level, a restoration action plan is happening across the river that is the outflow of the Lake Geneva. We had a company who wanted to restore a part of their land, also to protect them from some flooding that kept happening. On a small scale, that restoration wall provided the benefits against flooding, but did not have that impact at ecosystem level because it was a small scale. However, they then connected with the activities that are happening at the province level, and they aligned that restoration activity as part of a bigger restoration activity for the river. So that is an opportunity of seeking synergy. So you have a bigger impact. And criterion 3 is about identifying risks and have risk management beyond the intervention side. So I shared a little bit of examples of like for example, what is happening on the upstream or downstream is something that you have to take into consideration. Climate risk here is also very important, that you're working with nature. Nature is unpredictable, and it takes the long term. You can build a seawall in 1 year, sometimes 6 months if you really want to, but restoration activity is a long-term investment. And that's why you need to know what are the long-term risks to increase the sustainability of your intervention. So that is criteria 2. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Just one comment in the chat. One of the challenges is how to translate the concept of nature-based solutions to private sector and improve their involvement. So this is an important comment. And also there's another question coming. So the tool, the self-assessment tool, is it only available in English, or are there any languages, or they will be upcoming?
Yes, very good. Thank you so much. The online self-assessment tool right now, the platform itself is only available in English, and it is a top priority for us to at least have it in the other 2 official languages of IUCN, which are French and Spanish. We are working on securing funds for this. The support documents, however, there are documents that are uploaded on the platform. They are available in the 3 languages. We have the offline version of the self-assessment tool, the Excel document that is available in the 3 languages. We are now, like our wonderful colleagues in the different regions, different countries, they are also seeking opportunities to translate them in their local languages too. We have the standard, if I'm not mistaken, right now, the standard May document available in 12 languages, and we have another 8 that is now being under layout, and we hope to have the self-assessment tool translated in all of these languages too. Yes, thanks.
We are on time, and so I would like to take a moment to thank Dorsa on behalf of all the participants for all the important fundamental information and updating us with the common knowledge regarding IUCN nature-based solutions, the self-assessment tool, and giving us the most important aspect of NBS. And we know that we definitely have to build on this. Actually, now we are going to move on to our speakers, and the speakers will actually be giving us case studies, examples from different parts of the Mediterranean. We want to showcase different examples from different regions of the Med to see how actually NBS is being implemented. And then afterwards, this session, we will have our final Q&A session, which Dorsa will be still be with us. I hope she has still some energy. And then we will close our webinar. So thank you very much, Dorsa, for these previous sessions. And now I will be inviting our next speakers to showcase the studies from the Mediterranean, the projects that they have been working on. So I would like to start with Claudia Sanchez Escudero from NatMed. She will be presenting us the case which takes place in different countries in the Mediterranean. And then we will have Lisa Arnaul and then Wajdi Deep. So just a kind reminder for the speakers, you will have more or less around 10 minutes for your presentations. And for the participants, we will have 2 of the presentations in English and 1 in French. So make sure that you switch using the interpretation icon to the preferred channel that you would like to hear, which language you would like to continue with. So without further ado, Claudia, the floor is yours. You can share your screen. So floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about the NatMed project and 3 of its case studies. I'm Claudia Sanchez, and I'm project manager at MBS Climate, and I will provide firstly an overview of the project and then some details on the 3 European case studies and the use of the standard. I want to apologize also in advance because my voice is not great today as I have a bit of a sore throat, but I will try to speak as clearly as possible. Okay, so getting started, NatMed, it is a project funded by the PRIMA program, and it involves 5 Mediterranean countries, Spain, Greece, Italy, Turkey, and Algeria, which have in common several challenges specific to Mediterranean regions. The context in which it develops is marked by water scarcity, an issue aggravated by climate change. And to address this, improvements in water management are needed, and for that, a nature-based approach has been developed. And as a result, MBS arises as a sustainable response for improving the efficiency of existing natural and grey water infrastructures. So then some of the objectives of the project include to develop, implement, and validate a set of 12 MBSs addressing the water cycle as a whole by acting on its specific phases in order to improve water management by optimizing the provision of water-related and water-dependent ecosystem services, while also empowering stakeholders and local communities. Also, the MBS is developed within each case study, are being assessed against the IUCN Global Standard, and so far the assessment has focused on the information available from the design phase, but it will be updated after the implementation and monitoring. But it already has allowed us to start some good practices, identify areas for improvement, and recommendations that are being taken into account in the NBS development process. So the project includes 5 case studies, one per participating country, and they face all Mediterranean region common challenges, but also specific ones arising depending on their own specific context. But for this presentation, we will just focus on the 3 European case studies, starting with the Spanish one, then Greece, and finally Italy. I will provide firstly a summary of the MBS that are being developed in each case study, and then I will share with you some of the results available of the first conducted assessment against the standard. And as time is short, I will just focus on one criterion per case study, one of the best performance. So, case study 1 in Spain. It is located in the Experimental Center of New Water Technologies in Carrión de los Céspedes in Seville, and it is a living lab for the co-creation, innovation, and experimentation in the frame of wastewater treatment, reuse and circular economy. It is also working as the wastewater treatment plant of the village, and the treated water is used to irrigate an olive plot that is right next to the plant as part of the investigation work developed by them. And the MBS is being developed here under NatMed project include 10 constructed wetlands that are working in different configurations. They are already implemented in the experimental center, but for the project, the best configuration or order is being studied with the aim of optimizing the wastewater treatment processes. Also, some floating gardens are being implemented in one of the water storage tanks with the aim of reducing evaporation and create biodiversity. These floating gardens are designed as floating modules self-organized inside the tanks. And also, as a complementary intervention, an ultrasound emission equipment has been installed for microalgae reduction and E. coli removal. And these are the first assessment results against the standard for case study 1. In general, it aligns with the standard, but one of the highest scores was achieved for criterion 6 about balancing trade-offs. And some good practices that we can find under this criterion for case study one are that they have described some of the most important trade-offs occurring, such as balancing the presence of microalgae that captures carbon on the one hand, but can cause clogging in irrigation networks on the other hand. And also, for example, the relation between the reduction of the constructed wetlands area and the increase of energy consumption or economic cost associated. Also, the roles and responsibilities of the identified stakeholders are clear, as the main ones lie on the research center and public authorities that are the ones that have to guarantee in the end that the quality of the reclaimed water is fine. And also the farmers who own the land whose olive grows are to be irrigated with the treated water. And furthermore, about limits, the most important ones are already set by legislation on parameters related to the use of reclaimed water, which guarantee its safe use. And moving on to the next case study, it is placed in Greece. Timaditida Lake is in the Western Macedonia region in the north of the country. Timaditida is part of a lake complex that is surrounded by two small hills and a large crop area. It is an area of great ecological value, which is part of the Natura 2000 network with a rich variety of plants and animals. But the excessive growth of reeds in the lakes that you can see in the image have occurred very rapidly due to the decrease in water level, and it has led to the transformation of the largest part of the lake into bare land. To address this, the MBS to deploy are the creation of riparian buffers, which will be implemented in part of the lake to cope with the pressure of agricultural activities. Also, the inclusion and management of livestock, buffaloes in this case, that are native to the area, that will control ecologically the reed population, helping to restore the soil. For that, they will be managed through rotational grazing, and it will also create job opportunities for farmers, for instance. And then, as an additional intervention, the whole irrigation network will be updated, reducing like this water consumption and favoring local farmers. And these are the results of the first assessment against the standard for the Greek case study. And they achieved the highest score for criterion 4 about economical and financial viability, although they performed very well in the rest of criteria too. And some good practices extracted from this criterion are that they have developed a financial plan identifying benefits, costs, and beneficiaries, and it considers relevant aspects such as the carrying capacity of the lake complex regarding buffalo's grazing number, as well as marketing actions to promote buffalo-based products alongside with agrotouristic potential opportunities, which will provide an extra income for farmers. Also, comparisons have been made between the actual state and the zero solution scenario, and the proposed MBS intervention showed numerous advantages. And finally, a mapping of resourcing options has been made. It since farmers access to public funding, reducing their operational costs and allowing them to benefit from common services. And emphasis has been made to in the creation of a local agrotouristic product, which could provide visibility and at the end an added value to the area. All of this could contribute to the long-term sustainability of the intervention. And the last case study I'm going to talk you about is placed in the farming district of Arborea in Sardinia in Italy. Sorry. It is a productive agricultural claim reclaimed, where sand dunes were flattened and salted wetlands were drained. The resulting parcels were protected by eucalyptus edges and surrounded by a drainage network. Nowadays, due to farming activities, a portion of the territory has been declared as a nitrate vulnerable zone of agricultural origin. So to reduce nitrate pollution, different options have been already implemented, like a managed aquifer recharge system through the forested infiltration area technique, which is being further developed under NatMed project in order to increase the effectiveness of the nitrification process. So the main MBS developed under case study 3 is the forested infiltration area system. Here, the surface water is distributed through a network of trenches and wooded patches with different shrub or tree species. And on the one hand, there is a need to cope with increasing groundwater overexploitation, and the system benefits the groundwater recharge because tree roots maximize the infiltration rate, while, on the other hand, the nitrifying bacteria, which live in symbiosis with the tree roots, have a very effective action to promote nitrate attenuation. Nevertheless, as the nitrification purposes can be reached only at a maximum level, when the tree roots are fully developed, a passive treatment system has been directly implemented in the area in order to immediately activate the denitrification process. And these are the results of the first assessment for case study 3, and the criterion in which they achieve a highest score is number 7 about monitoring and adaptive management. And some of the good practices that we can find here, among others, are that as part of the overall NBS strategy, actions and outcomes were integrated to set up a detailed monitoring plan to evaluate the efficiency of the system and inform corrective actions. It includes also as one of the main objectives to develop a technique that can be easily accepted by farmers, local institutions, and civil society, which can be also economically sustainable. And a robust and adaptive monitoring and evaluation plan has been ongoing, in fact, since June 2023, following the start of the intervention. Since then, the main environmental variables are constantly monitored, and proof of this is that some deviations from the expected outcomes have been already identified, but this fact has triggered some corrective measures already. So everything is working properly regarding monitoring. And lastly, all the findings of monitoring are being shared with key stakeholders. In this case, farmers are the direct and main beneficiaries of the intervention, so the main stakeholders. And with this, I conclude the presentation. And I'm sorry I could not go into more detail. I hope you found it interesting. You can always find more information about all the case studies, the NatMed project, and us, NBS Climate, in the links of the screen. And thank you very much for your attention.
And hope you get well soon. And if possible, would you mind sharing some of the links in the chat so the participants can access the links easily? And this is just one of the initial webinar series regarding NBS. Hopefully in the upcoming periods, we will have more NBS related webinars, and we hope to focus more on practical examples. Today, we do not have that much time. We wish we could showcase more examples from the Mediterranean, but hopefully in the upcoming weeks or months, we will have more presentations regarding more projects on NBS. And for the participants, if you were to have any questions, you can write them in chat for Claudia, and you can also save them for our final Q&A session. So once again, thank you very much, Claudia. It was very interesting to hear from the cases from Greece, Italy, and Spain as well. And now we are going to move towards the eastern part of the Mediterranean, and I'm going to give the floor to Liza Arnaoğlu from Turdavala, and she will be presenting us a case from Turkey. So Liza, the floor is yours, and you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my screen and hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Liza Arnaoğlu, and I am the coordinator of the management and restoration team at the Tour de Valette based in southern France. And today I will be presenting a project that we're working on in collaboration with a partner of ours, DOA, in Western Turkey. It's a really exciting project of restoration of a former branch of the Gediz River in the context of climate change. So just a little bit about the Gediz Delta. It's one of the most important wetlands in the Mediterranean basin because it is an international zone for migrating birds coming from 3 different continents, with over 299 bird species, 14 freshwater species of fish, 35 reptile and amphibian species, and 8 mammal species. There has been a lot of interest in this area over the years to help preserve the site, and it is a Ramsar site and a specially protected area for Turkey. There's a mosaic of habitats that make the area even more interesting because it's not just one type of habitat, but there's lagoons, salt marshes, freshwater marshes, and hills that include some shrub areas as well promoting different types of biodiversity. So in the Geddes Delta, we have done a lot of different analysis to identify what are the main threats, and we mapped these threats. And what we found are there are four most important threats in the area. The first is urbanization. The second is related to pollution. The third, salinization. And then the fourth is climate change. So on these maps, you can see a coalition of the different threats and see where they're the most important and where possible management or conservation activities need to be implemented. So here's a picture of the area that we're working on for the restoration project. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer. Yes, okay. So here where my pointer is a wastewater treatment center that today it's been functioning for over a decade. And today it's pumping all of the treated water out into the Izmir Bay. And it's been a very, very important structure that has allowed the city of Izmir and the surrounding areas to improve the capacity for treating the water and not dumping it directly into the bay. But the idea is in the area just to the west of the wastewater treatment center is a very large wetland area, very salty area. And you can see here to the left of the screen is a former branch of the Geddes River. This Geddes River branch was transformed and moved to the north of the Delta over 2 centuries ago. And as far as ecological impact, this area has been very degraded. It was turned into agricultural land, and now today the agricultural land is mostly very salty, reducing the potential for both agriculture and grazing. So the idea with this project is to use part of the water coming from the wastewater treatment plant that has been effectively cleaned and is clean, and to reestablish through this blue line that you can see a connection to the former branch of the Geddes River. Along the way, the idea is also to develop some small temporary ponds, which will also help decrease the salinity and increase the biodiversity. It's a really exciting project because it's really done in collaboration between the private sector, the municipality, the national parks, a local NGO, and also the farmers and the cattle grazers of the area. So this project is just beginning, and today I'm gonna, Dorsa talked a lot about how to create a new project. Today I'm gonna talk a little bit also about the importance of monitoring to really put in place an adaptive management restoration project. So the objectives of this project are based on 4 different pillars. The first is urban and community development and really engaging the local community in the project. Rural community development focusing on grassland restoration for grazing, the restoration of coastal wetland recovery, more for biodiversity and decreasing the salinity. And it takes into account a very strong emphasis on the monitoring and enhancing the scientific research to see if this type of project could eventually be replicated in other areas in Turkey and eventually in the Mediterranean basin. So the importance of the monitoring in the restoration for the nature-based solutions is really to look at what are the objectives and to create indicators that really look into those objectives. So we talked a little bit about the reduction of water salinity. So there's a very strong importance put on water monitoring throughout the restoration area within the temporary wetlands all the way out to the branch of the Geddes River. There's also a focus on biodiversity, looking at different sectors, whether it be dragonflies, reptiles and amphibians, and birds. So all of these different segments of the environment are looked at, and different monitoring protocols are put in place for each of these sectors to see which sectors of the biodiversity are improving with this wetland restoration. is there too much water coming, too much fresh water coming into the system, not enough, and how can we adapt that to the different species? And then also looking at the grazing potential and the impact on the potential grazing. So how many animals are grazing now? How many animals could eventually graze to improve the livelihoods of the shepherds in the area? So I'm just going to show you very quickly a little bit of the monitoring protocols. In this one picture, you can see the monitoring of the reptiles and amphibians, and also the water. And so the reptiles and amphibians in this picture have different segments that we look at, and we trace several times a year to see what reptiles are there. And then over this, then we put on the dragonfly monitoring. So it's not in exactly the same spaces, but it's where the dragonflies are more prone to be with the wetland restoration. And then there's also a very strong emphasis put on the vegetation monitoring, seeing what kind of vegetation is there. We started the baseline study last year before the restoration activities are put in place. So there's over 100 points for vegetation cover, where we look at the types of vegetation, the surface area covered, and there's also a photo monitoring put into place so we can really see what's happening in each area as the water is going to be pumped in. So it's really, for us, important to put in place these monitoring activities, the baseline and the monitoring activities, but it should be based on very clear objectives, whether they be biodiversity or human-oriented objectives. And for each of the different objectives, we need clear indicators so we can really adapt to the management of the area. It needs to have a long-term monitoring, so it's not only a monitoring that's happening during the restoration activities, but we want to monitor the area over the years so we can really adapt the impact and how we should manage the site for both the biodiversity and the human needs. And one thing that is really interesting is that the monitoring can generate social learning. So we're trying to involve the stakeholders as much as possible so we can really have a collaborative type of decision making to see how much water should be pumped in, how many animals should be there, so that each of the different actors can benefit from the restoration project. So just to conclude, the restoration project is really a nature-based solution because it does take into account the ecological restoration of the former branch of the Gettys River. And really the idea is to enhance the biodiversity of this area. But at the same time, we're addressing the societal changes of increasing salinity and the impact on the agriculture and the grazing. And finally, we're trying to ensure the human well-being, so taking into account the economic opportunities and produce benefits for the society overall. So it was a very quick presentation, but I'm here, and I also have participants in the audience from Doha who are happy to answer any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
For sharing this example from the Eastern Mediterranean, which I personally also know very well too. And if you were to have any links that you think might be useful for the participants, we would appreciate if you can also share them in the chat. And for questions for Lisa, please state them in the chat. We will get to the questions after the final presentation. So thank you again, Lisa. So now, last but not least, we would like to give the floor to our final speaker, Vajdi from Le Ami de Capte, to present a case study from Tunisia. If you need to switch the language channels, just as a reminder, and Vajdi, the floor is yours. Yes, you can switch to the presentation mode, and the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank IUCN and CMB for the organization and this opportunity. My presentation will be in French, so you can still switch to the English translator in the Zoom toolbar. So I will start in French right now. Donc, je me présente, Wajdi Dib, coordinateur de projet au sein de l'association des Amis de Cap. Donc, CAPT, c'est Collectif d'acteurs pour la plantation et la transition environnementale. C'est une société de l'économie sociale et solidaire basée à Marseille et une association depuis 2007 qui, euh, qui prône une approche de partenariat public-privé et qui offre un modèle de solidarité climatique par l'agroforesterie. Donc, notre vision, c'est de réconcilier agriculture et environnement. Et nos missions, c'est de contribuer à la lutte contre le changement climatique par l'agroforesterie. Donc, nous prenons l'agroforesterie et faisons la promotion de l'agroforesterie, mais aussi c'est de contribuer au développement et de la solidarité entre et avec les agriculteurs pour contribuer à l'amélioration de et la régénération et la conservation des écosystèmes et de la biodiversité. Donc, notre tout premier projet corridor environnementaux autour de Ouadachine a été mené entre 2019 et 2021 grâce au programme du PPO-SCAN 1 et une auto-évaluation a été faite avec les partenaires de l'IUCN Med et qui a pu être classifiée comme IUCN et partagée sur un document qu'on peut trouver en ligne qui s'appelle le Planning and Delivering Nature-Based Solutions in Medium Cities. Donc, en se basant sur notre première expérience, nous avons décidé d'incorporer trois autres approches sur notre projet futur, qui est la viabilité économique, l'approche participative, mais aussi la coopération technique. Donc, en intégrant ces trois composantes avec les acquis déjà eus lors du premier projet, nous avons pu aboutir au projet C6. Donc, en quelques mots, le projet C6, il vise à mettre en place des agrosystèmes autour du carobier, des vergers agroforestiers mixtes, mais qui contiennent des arbres de carobier, et le renforcement de la coopération en vue de l'adaptation des techniques de production de carobier adaptées au changement climatique. Enfin, l'élaboration d'une stratégie et d'un plan de gouvernance de la filière carob en Tunisie. Donc, sans trop s'attarder, passons aux critères des standards de l'IUCN, SFN. Donc, pour le premier critère, des études, des approches ont été faites participatives avec nos partenaires lors du montage de projets via des ateliers, des formations ou des webinaires. Et plusieurs retours ont été collectés, surtout se basant sur la préoccupation des acteurs, des agriculteurs et des partenaires sur la rareté de l'eau et des cultures économes en eau, mais aussi la valorisation des produits locaux, la protection et de la biodiversité et surtout mettre en valeur les primo-transformations des produits. Ainsi, nous avons pu dégager cinq critères, défis sociétaux qui sont le développement socio-économique, la sécurité de l'approvisionnement en eau, l'atténuation et l'adaptation au changement climatique, dégradation environnementale, mais aussi la sécurité alimentaire. Pour le critère 2, donc, nous avons intégré plusieurs partenaires dans notre projet, que ce soit des agriculteurs, que ce soit des institutions nationales publiques, que ce soit des ONG locales. Et nous avons fait des activités de mapping collectif, permettant ainsi de désigner le rôle de chaque acteur dans la filière du carobier, mais aussi de faire des partenariats avec des institutions importantes, internationales et nationales, telles que le CIRAD et l'UNERGREF. Donc, comme ébauche à ces activités, donc le projet, il est fini, mais les résultats continuent encore. Comme ébauche à cette activité, c'est la création de l'Observatoire du carobier en Tunisie, sujet sur lequel nous travaillons actuellement. Mais aussi la mobilisation et la sensibilisation des parties prenantes comme les agriculteurs, donc faire des ateliers de sensibilisation et de formation aux agriculteurs, à à nos partenaires institutionnels tels que les rangers des forêts en Tunisie, mais aussi les étudiants en école d'ingénierie grâce à nos partenariats avec les écoles d'ingénieurs agronomes en Tunisie. Donc, le troisième critère, le gain net en biodiversité, par la mise en place de vergers mixtes et modèles d'agroforestiers, nous avons des diversités d'espèces, donc c'est une diversité d'habitats pour la faune locale, la connectivité écologique, des corridors écologiques, donc nous travaillons avec des acteurs assez proches d'un point de vue géographique, créant ainsi un corridor écologique pour la biodiversité locale. La collaboration avec des partenaires scientifiques. Donc, au sein de CAPT, nous avons travaillé avec plusieurs NGO scientifiques tels que les Amis des Oiseaux, l'Association physicienne de la Ville Sauvage, et qui nous permettent d'avoir des résultats scientifiques assez concrets sur les activités qu'on fait et leur effet. Et enfin, la restauration et la création d'écosystèmes. Donc, quand je parle de restauration, c'est planter ou faire des plantations d'acorobis sur des terrains dégradés, incendiés, surtout en forêt publique, et la création d'écosystèmes par la plantation chez les agriculteurs sur des zones où aucun arbre, aucune plantation n'a été faite. Donc, c'est un terrain nu où nous intervenons pour créer des vergers et donc créer une biodiversité et un écosystème adapté à la faune locale. En ce qui concerne le quatrième critère, donc une analyse financière a été faite lors du montage du projet pour démontrer les points forts économiques du Carobier, mais aussi les points faibles économiques que le Carobier peut présenter. Et, et des points faibles du Carobier, c'est sa croissance assez lente. Et donc, pour y remédier, nous avons fait des mesures d'atténuation et d'anticipation telles que l'introduction de couverts végétaux. Ainsi, les couverts végétaux peuvent donner un gain net économique dans l'année N+1 et ne pas attendre jusqu'à ce que les carobiers rentrent en production. Mais aussi, c'est de faire des activités de greffage parce que le greffage permet d'anticiper l'entrée en production à la 3e année au lieu de la 6e année. Enfin, nous travaillons actuellement avec des partenariats et des parlers avec des institutions nationales de microfinancement privé, mais aussi avec des instituts de financement public, tels que l'Agence de promotion des investissements agricoles, permettant ainsi de créer des chemins de financement aux agriculteurs pour pouvoir installer leur budget de carobiers migres sous système agroforestier. Euh, Pour le critère 5, donc, des représentations régionales ont été faites sur différentes zones où nous travaillons. Donc, chaque coordinateur travaille sur une région bien spécifique, permettant de relier les informations entre les agriculteurs et l'association, mais aussi de faire un travail collaboratif et personnalisé avec les agriculteurs pour pouvoir proposer des solutions personnalisées et co-construire ensemble les solutions. Donc, ces solutions, après qu'elles aient été co-construites, ils sont écrites et rédigées dans un contrat, dans une sorte de partenariat que nous signons avec les agriculteurs, permettant ainsi de limiter les engagements des uns et des autres. Pour le critère 6, donc deux problèmes majeurs que nous rencontrons en Tunisie, c'est l'accès à la terre. Donc, l'accès à la terre, il peut y avoir des problèmes d'héritage ou de litige sur la propriété d'un terrain et mettre en périple notre plantation et nos actions SFL, mais aussi le pâturage sauvage qui se fait en été, car il faut savoir en Tunisie que l'été, il n'y a pas beaucoup de verdure, donc chaque plante est bonne à prendre, si je peux le dire, pour les vergers, et ça peut compromettre nos plantations et les mettre en péril. Donc, de ce fait, nous faisons aussi des contrats de partenariat qui permettent de limiter les engagements des uns et des autres, comme je l'ai rappelé, mais aussi de faire une enquête de diagnostic au préalable et faire un scoring des agriculteurs, permettant ainsi de sélectionner les agriculteurs partenaires avec lesquels les SFP et les résultats peuvent réussir au mieux. Pour l'autre aspect aussi, c'est le gardiennage en été et l'entretien, parce que planter, c'est bien, mais il faut réussir la première année. Et en Tunisie, il fait très, très chaud en été avec des précipitations quasiment absentes. Nous accompagnons les agriculteurs avec des activités d'entretien, mais aussi d'irrigation durant la période estivale, que ce soit pour les partenaires agriculteurs privés, mais aussi pour les terrains plantés en forêt publique. Enfin, pour le critère 7, donc des suivis réguliers faits pendant et après les implantations, permettant ainsi de récolter toutes les informations qui sont classées dans des rapports mensuels, puis des rapports semestriels pour pouvoir mesurer l'impact du projet. Mis à part les rapports, une base de données est tenue pour chaque agriculteur avec les données quantitatives et qualitatives pour pouvoir suivre l'évolution de ces plantations et voir si les mesures qu'on doit prendre pour rectifier le tir en cas d'échec de plantation. Un travail de concertation aussi avec les agriculteurs, car nous proposons une panoplie de plantations et d'espèces à planter, mais chaque agriculteur a un terrain bien spécifique ou des besoins bien spécifiques. Donc, nous échangeons avec eux sur les espèces à planter, la densité, et tout cela est répertorié, ou plutôt mis en place sur une carte réelle faite par nos collègues avec les plantations faites et les espèces faites selon les densités faites choisies avec les cutters. Enfin, sans trop s'attarder, le dernier critère, alors la replicabilité et la gestion géographique. Donc, grâce au succès du projet C6 avec le partenariat du PPO-SCAN, nous avons pu élargir nos activités grâce à d'autres partenaires scientifiques comme le PNUD et les CARDA, mais aussi l'entreprise dans le cadre de sa politique RSE, passant ainsi de 38 hectares sur 2 gouvernorats initialement prévus en 2022 à plus de 120 hectares aménagés sur 6 gouvernorats jusqu'en 2024. Donc, aussi grâce au financement et soutien du PPO-SCAN, le projet C6 a été reconnu, recevra un financement de la part du GIF UNIDO pour étendre la diffusion des CCFN et consolider les actions précédemment évoquées. Donc, c'est l'effet multiplicateur que nous trouvons à la classification SFN de ce projet. Et nous pourrons ainsi, comme nous avons fait pour le premier projet, consolider un troisième projet tout en se basant sur les leçons apprises pour intégrer encore plus des FN et consolider nos critères et nos indicateurs. Donc, vous pouvez toujours nous contacter via tous les canaux possibles, Facebook, LinkedIn et email. Et je vous remercie pour cette opportunité.
Wajdi, for this case study from Tunisia. It was very interesting to hear different examples from the Mediterranean. And I once again thank all the speakers of this session for sharing with us this practical implementations. And Wajdi, if you also have any useful links for the participants, please share them in the chat. So well, we still have more or less 10 minutes for the interactive Q&A and discussion session, which I already see 2 questions in the chat. One of them is actually directing Lisa. So Lisa, the question is for you. It is stating, the question is that, did I understand well that Gediz River was rerouted 200 years ago? Can't we consider that the area has reached a different equilibrium by then?
Thank you very much for the question. And yes, definitely the situation with the rerouting of the Gediz River over such a long period of time has created a new new ecosystem and different habitats. Added to that is also climate change, which the area is getting a lot less rain and water being coming naturally into the area. And there's also the damming of the Gediz River. So in a delta kind of system, such as the Gediz Delta, normally it's a very, especially in the Mediterranean area, a very variable type of habitat or ecosystem, where each year you can get a lot of water coming in, other years you get a lot less, and it's a constantly evolving system. Taking that into account and taking into account that the system has changed over such a long period of time, the idea is not to use a certain reference ecosystem, that we want to maintain a very high level of fresh water coming into the system on a daily or seasonally basis. And that's why the adaptive management and the monitoring is really important, so that we can kind of mimic that kind of climate of the Mediterranean area that's very variable. And it will allow many different types of habitats to prosper. Some that maybe certain people might not consider very rich, such as very salty habitats. But if we put into place a management system that mimics a natural kind of Mediterranean climate, there will be more of a mosaic of habitats, and not only the salty kind of habitat that we're getting at the time being now. So it will definitely not return to the same system that it was 200 years ago, but we're hoping to create a type of mosaic that will promote different biodiversity and land uses that can be done in the area.
And you can put your questions in the chat for the speakers, or you can raise your hand directing to the speaker that you would like to ask your questions. I also see another question, which this can be for the speakers and also maybe for Dorsa. So Eugenia just asked, would a project involving grazing cattle to maintain a meadow in a wetland area be a plausible nature-based solution? Thank you. So any one of the speakers or Dorsa, please feel free to respond to the question. I see Dorsa.
Hello again. So potentially, yes, because going back to the fundamentals, you are trying to maintain your ecosystem services for food security reasons. So in short, yes, in long, you have to assess it against the standard to make sure that and you are aligning with the criteria.
Thank you, Dorsa. I see a question. I think this is referring to all the speakers who would like to respond. And then there's a question in French, which Marion will definitely and will help for the question. So the question is, it would be great if the case studies presented tell us their duration and amount of funding. So if either one of the speakers would like to contribute to that, please, the floor is yours, and then I will give the floor to Marion. So I see Claudia.
Yes, hello. For example, for NatMed, it is a project that it lasts 3 years. We are 5 countries, I think about 15 partners, and the overall budget is around 4 million euros. So that's it.
So just for the project that I talked about in the Geddes Delta, it has several funding bodies and several time periods as well. So it's not a one single project that's funding the entire activity. So there's a Horizon project that's funding most of the engineering work and the feasibility work. The project that I talked about more, the monitoring, is being funded by the French Agency for Development, which is a 4-year project. And that's only funding the monitoring and the baseline. And then there's also funding coming from the local government. And so there's many different projects working on different frame lines and different amounts of money. And there's also the private sector that has also put in a lot of their time and specialties to do that as well. So I can't give you a total budget, but I can say the idea is to at least have with the monitoring a 4 or 5 year project. We also have a PhD student who's focalized on that as well, which is a 3 to 4 year project. So there's, for us, when we get involved in this type of project, we try to make it as long as possible to really have the feasibility studies at the beginning, the implementation, and the monitoring and the evaluation at the end.
Yeah, thank you. There was a question in French. So I think it may be for Dorsa or any speaker who want to jump in. So it was, can the water discharge from an aquaculture facility into a wetland or a coastal lagoon be considered a nature-based solution during a drought?
Thank you so much, Marianne. And for the colleague who raised this question, yes, because you're trying to address the water security issues as well as maintaining or enhancing the ecosystem integrity of your wetland area. But we need to, like, additional information going back to the concept of NBS is that whether that wetland and the water needs from it is only for conservation purposes or the communities around there are relying on that the services that are provided by the wetland.
Thank you, Dorsa. My pleasure.
Directed to Vajdi. I think, Vajdi, you have seen the question, please. Floor is yours.
Donc, pour répondre à la question qui dit est-ce que maintenant nous avons installé des pépinières de carobiers dans notre projet. Donc, oui, effectivement, nous avons installé des pépinières, ce qu'on appelle nous des pépinières volantes. Ce sont des pépinières qu'on installe avec la communauté locale pour une durée de vie de 3 à 5 ans qui permettent de produire des carobiers issus de graines ou de plants collectés localement afin de produire les plantes et les replanter dans la communauté locale. Donc, ça fait déjà une propagation des nombres d'arbres de carobiers qu'on peut planter localement, mais aussi ça fait une rentrée d'argent nette pour le bénéficiaire qui peut être considéré comme un 13e mois pour les agriculteurs. Donc, encore un point de plus pour les gains, critères de gains économiques, viabilité économique. Donc, nous, ça nous permet d'avoir des arbres, mais aussi l'agriculteur d'avoir un gain net économique qui peut être très important pour les agriculteurs.
Questions or comments? We are coming to the end of our webinar. If there are any final questions or comments, we can address them at the moment. And if there are no further questions or comments, we can come to the end of our webinar. So I don't see any hands or questions at the moment or comments. So, well, I would like to start by thanking all our valuable speakers and also all the participants who have been with us today for 3 hours. Thanks for joining us. And I also would like to thank my colleagues for the support organizing these webinars, as well as our interpreters for being with us for today. And we hope that we were able to emphasize the fundamental importance of nature-based solutions with some practical examples from the Mediterranean. The recording of the webinar will actually be shared by email with the registered participants, and also you can access these recordings through the website of Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium, which we also would like to highlight that this webinar actually was organized by IUCN in collaboration with the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium within the frame of the RESCOM project, which we recently launched the call for small projects focusing on nature-based solutions. My colleague Marion is now actually sharing the consortium website. And for those organizations that are interested in applying to the call for small projects, we are also sharing the guidelines and the brief application form links in the chat. The deadline, just a reminder, is 8th of December. And this webinar was very important for this call for small projects. And we hope we were able to gain the necessary information about nature-based solution and build up onto it with the practical examples. And hopefully we will have more sessions like this in the upcoming periods. So once again, I would like to thank everyone, and we hope to see you in the other upcoming webinars. So thank you very much and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you to all of you, and thank you for moderating this session very effectively.
Yes, and thank you very much, Dorsa, for all the sessions, valuable sessions about nature-based solutions.
Pleasure.
Yes, it was very crucial.
Thanks.
Okay,
and good luck
you.
with the rest of the project
Goodbye.
implementation to all of you.
Thanks.
Merci.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.